Welcome to the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where each week we simplify the complexities of your leadership journey.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, where we aim to give you critical and easily applicable leadership concepts to help you along your journey. I'm your co-host, Scott, and I have the privilege of talking life and leadership with the owner and founder of Rising Tide Leadership, Dr. Michael David Morales, aka Mo.
Hey, Scotty, it sounds very official when you say it that way. So, hey, man, it's good to be here. Let's talk leadership.
Absolutely. So today we're talking about team building. And when I think of team building, I think of one of my favorite heist movies, and there's a lot of them out there, but one of my all-time favorites is Ocean's 11. So in the movie, Danny Ocean, who's played by George Clooney, is released from a New Jersey prison, and in less than 24 hours is already planning his next big heist. Now, everybody knows that a dysfunctional team and poor planning lead to even poorer outcomes, and there are so many movies and shows out there that show this and prove this point. So with that being said, Ocean decides to set off to assemble his team while following really three simple rules. First, don't hurt anybody. Then don't steal from anyone who doesn't deserve it. And lastly, play the game like you've got nothing to lose. And these three rules mean that Ocean has to be very selective in building his winning team. He can't just pick anybody off the street. So he goes through a whole process of selecting each team member for a specific part of the job. He, for example, hires Basher for a specific demolition role. He hires Yen for his acrobatic skills, and then he hires the hilarious and probably my favorite characters, Turk and Virgil, for their driving, but also arguing skills, and then hires a few others that we're not going to get into. But overall, Ocean knows that building a winning team is the only way the heist is going to be successful, and they are successful. Plot twist, or not plot twist, spoiler alert, I should say. But overall, not without hiccups, because what Hollywood heist movie doesn't have those. But because Ocean has the right people on his team, they're able to adapt and come out victorious. And so this is just one example of showing that building a winning team is a cornerstone of effective leadership. And so as we dive into this episode, I know we're going to explore three key points that help our listeners excel in this area. So why don't you go ahead, help us dive into that first point.
Yeah, you got it, man. Let me tell you, I love Ocean's 11. Ocean's 12 is, pretty good, but Ocean's 13 was like, way to bring it home. So great franchise, and loved it. But hey, today we're talking about building winning teams, and Danny Ocean really did build a winning team, and all the stuff that they go through, and they deal with problems and all that kind of stuff. So the question for our leaders out there today is, are you building your winning team? And so if you want to do that, like Scott said, we've got 3 points. And the first one is this: if you want to build a winning team, you need to you need to focus on assembling the right mix of talent. And so the first step in building your winning team is to, get everybody kind of in the right place. And we talk about that all the time, right? About getting the right people on the bus. So it's not about finding the best individuals. It's more about finding the right individuals to work effectively together to achieve whatever your goal is. And Scott, there's different goals in different industries, or where you're giving time to, whether it's your local church or at your workplace. There's a whole different set of things that you need to get done. And so for our leaders out there, I really want you to focus on where you are called to be a leader. And so if this is the common goal, how do you do that together?
Absolutely. And I have to step in and ask a question here, because logically it would seem that the best people would be the right people. So the best people may be meaning that the person with the right qualifications, the right certifications, the right education would be those right people. So if that's not the case, then Mo, what would be that secret to finding the perfect mix of talent?
Yeah, it's funny, Scotty. I actually get this question a lot. People say exactly what you did. Well, it seems like the best people are the right people, right? And really the answer is sometimes, but not always. In fact, when I've been a coach for young people for my entire adult career, And I always tell these kids, whether I'm recruiting at the college level or talking about putting together a team for high school or a club or whatever, as a swim coach, I say, look, I'm not looking for the best people. I'm looking for the right people. Now, the right people might be, or the best people could be part of the right people, but not always. And so really think about it like this. If we start by understanding the team's objectives and the roles that are required to achieve those objectives, then you're on the right track. You see, leaders need to assess the strengths and weaknesses of their team members and align them with these roles. Because you might have some like the best people, but sometimes the best people, Scott, have also like the toughest weaknesses. And I'm telling you, you get the wrong weaknesses in the wrong place, and it's really going to kind of put you at a disadvantage. And so leaders, when you're doing that, you need to be asking yourself, do I have the right people? Which brings me, of course, Scott, to our first book recommendation of the day, which is no stranger to anybody who's been listening to this podcast. And it is this, StrengthsFinder 2.0 by Tom Rath. It's a definite must for every leader to read. And I know we talk about the top 50, and every book, right, Scott, is on my top 5. But I'm telling you, for reals this time, that you should have this book on your shelf. And Scott, I told you right away when we started hanging out years ago, get this book on your shelf. And so here's a question that I have. For each of you leaders out there, do you know your top 5 strengths? Now, if you're really invested, you can, go to the website and pay a little bit more, right? And get what I call what they call the top 34 strengths, because there's 34 strengths in StrengthsFinder. And so you can either, get the book that has a code, and you can know your top 5 strengths, or you can do what I did and pay a couple extra dollars and actually find out your strengths from top to bottom, your best strength at number 1, and the strength that you are least likely to have, which is number 34. And so once you know, leaders, your top 5, you can start to lead others from those strengths. That's the first part. But Scott, you probably know where I'm going next. If you want to find the right mix of talent, you're going to have to know not only your strengths, but the strengths of the people on your team. Meaning, you don't want a bunch of people like yourself, because that's really going to frustrate you, because we end up really actually not liking, really having people like ourselves, because, we already have to deal with ourselves every day, right? So let's find different people. And I'm always trying to find people with different strengths. In fact, Scott, you and I have a very different set of strengths, right? And it was really funny when you took StrengthsFinder the first time. You're like, Mo, we are completely different. So actually, in fact, Scott, before I go any further, why don't you tell our audience what one of your top 5 strengths are? Just go and choose one.
Yeah. Well, if I had to choose just one, I'm going to pick the one that is the most opposite you and I, and that's woo. And what woo means is winning others over. And so essentially what that means is I enjoy the challenge of meeting new people and getting to know them. I view strangers as actually energizing, and meeting them is exciting to me. One of the best examples that I have of this is actually this last summer. I went to a conference with some coworkers, and we ended up at an expo, and I was just in my element. And the people that I was with, even after the fact, were like, we could not believe where you pulled this energy from. We'd been at this conference all day. You walked into this giant expo hall, and we're just like, let's meet people. Let's see what people are handing out. Let's make connections. And they were just like, we've never seen anybody connect. And so, there I go. That's that woo. Strangers are exciting to me. Meeting people are exciting to me. There's no such thing as an awkward moment. Like, love it. So that's probably the top strength that I view as kind of the biggest difference between you and I.
Yeah, well, and obviously, Scott, I mean, we actually know that, right? Because as I just said, I actually took the 34 strengths from top to bottom, and my number 34, contrary to popular belief, is woo. That is not one of my strengths at all. And so, Scott, having you on the team really brings that out for the things that we do, and it causes us really to have a lot of fun. And you're like, I mean, our listeners out there, Scott doesn't have any non-friends. He meets not strangers, but future friends. So if you ever meet Scott, go ahead and talk to him like you've known him forever, because he's literally going to be talking to you like that in like 5 minutes. So, and Scott, it's important for both, you and I, right, to be aware of our strengths and how we differ, because, when you're a leader, you got to be in tune with others and their strengths, because, if you don't, they're going to end up perturbing you, right? I mean, we can start thinking like, well, wow, this person isn't like me, and that really bugs me. Or we can view it the way leaders should be viewing, which is, wow, this person isn't like me. That means they have strengths that I don't. And it's easier for us to communicate with people, right, that think just like us, but that's not who I want on my team. I want to bring others on with different strengths, with a different mix of talent, to really help me get better at doing the things that frustrate me. And you know what, Scott? When we have people that have different strengths on our team, it's really going to pull us out of our comfort zone. As much as I hate being out of my comfort zone, having people with different strengths on the team really helps you get out of that comfort zone and be better. So, for our listeners out there, that's really my plug to why you have to get that book. And let me be clear. We don't have any affiliation with Tom Rath or his team. I just really love this assessment and what it's done for me over the years, and also the people that I work with. It's really done wonders for Scott and everybody else on our team. And, whenever actually, Scott, and you can attest to this, whenever I start a new coaching relationship, as I did with you, I always tell that individual, as I did in your case, right, Scott, I said, have you done the Strengths Finder? And if you haven't, are you willing to do it? And, usually even if you've already done it, I'll say, hey, when's the last time you did it? Because your strengths do change over the years, but it's about connecting with people, and you can do that through strengths. Lead from your strengths, lead towards their strengths.
Yeah, 100%. And I can even attest that the first time I ever took Strengths Finder was as a freshman in college, and then didn't take it again until, probably like 4 years ago. And which I was well out of college by that point. And complete opposite, very, very different. So just even through life, it changes as you go. So all of that makes a ton of sense. And so let's say you've assembled that team, hopefully using StrengthsFinder. What would that next step be then?
Yeah. Point 2 is this today. When you're building your winning team, it's all about fostering collaboration and synergy. One of my favorite words. And a winning team just isn't a group of talented individuals, which I hope you have out there as a leader, but it's a group of talented individuals who work together in a seamless fashion. That's what you want to get to. And to achieve this, leaders, you really need to create an environment that fosters collaboration and synergy.
That sounds super important. So then how can leaders kind of go about doing that?
Yeah, well, you can start by creating opportunities for your team members, and we talk about that a lot. And you want them to get to know each other on a personal level. That's going to strengthen relationship. It's going to help with your team building. So any of those kind of activities, do these inside and outside of work. Do them formally, do them informally. If you go out with to dinner or something with a person or people on your team afterwards, this is all beneficial. And I think it's a great way to help your team figure out what they need to do to work together to achieve any kind of objective. And when they're put in scenarios to actually help them do this, it helps them to grow. So you really need to challenge your team in this way. And so the reason people don't like team building activities, for instance, at seminars, is because people who are running those seminars, I mean, let's just say they're lazy, and because they're just used to always doing the same activity. So leaders, don't be lazy. Give your team the best opportunity. Put them in good situations, in tough situations where they have to work together and have synergy. And if they can work together on the small things, and trust me, when the going gets tough, they're going to support one another, and they're going to be able to achieve the objectives that are set before them. Because, believe me, when the going gets tough, trust me, conflict will arise. And that's when you're going to know the nature of your team's ability to support and work with one another. So, that's the real test of synergy.
Yeah, so I feel like you just mentioned conflict, and maybe some people and some of our listeners are like, oh, shoot, conflict, that thing that nobody necessarily enjoys having to traverse. And so then as leaders, how do we address and kind of solve those conflicts within the team?
Yeah, well, I mean, let me start by saying conflict is natural. It's a natural part of any team, but it's the way that you address it that matters. So leaders, you need to be encouraging open communication, provide a safe space for your team members to express concerns, and mediating these conflicts early and effectively can actually lead to better team cohesion in the long run. So really, that's the long way of me saying that that you really don't want to necessarily solve complex problems right away. You want to give it some time when people run into conflict.
Yeah, absolutely. And really, you are kind of always talking about the job of a leader to that, or I should say that the job of a leader is to solve problems. And so then really,
Right.
how does that fit then into all of this?
Yeah, that is definitely a great question. And of course, as a leader, yes, you're supposed to solve the problem. And I'm not saying don't solve the problem. What I'm saying is don't make it too easy for your team. I mean, think about it.
Mm,
We're all taught in school that if you help a butterfly get out of a cocoon, it's going to die, right? Because it's the struggle that makes it able to live. And so the same goes for an egg that hatches, a little chick. Because it ends up, being, a bird or even a mighty eagle that's going to fly in the sky one day, right? So, hey,
mhm.
your team's no different. If you help them too much and they're going to start relying on you for all the heavy lifting. And that's not leadership, that's management. It's leaders who are short-sighted that end up fixing the problems right away because they're just too annoyed with things. They need to get to the next part, or we just need to get this out of the way. Or we need to get going. And they just don't let the process, there's that word, they don't let the process work itself out.
Feel like you say that word a whole heck of a lot. It's almost like I'm talking with like Joel Embiid, right? Like trust the process. And so, can you
Yes.
expand on that?
Yeah, absolutely, Scott. And I mean, if I had a nickel for every time I talk about the process, I think we'd all be rich, right? So, I mean, you leaders, you have to learn to love the process, right? I mean, it's not about the destination. One thing I've told student athletes over the years is do not forget the journey for the destination. The growth is the struggle. When your team is struggling and has conflict, you can know that it's either going to make them better or worse. But your job as a leader is to facilitate good interactions, communication for your team, give them the best opportunities to grow as individuals. And that's what's going to make them a stronger team. Nobody can really say how long the process is. Every team's different. And that's why I love working with every team, because it doesn't matter if you're in the same industry or anything, the people are going to be different no matter what.
Mm,
Remember, we talked about strengths early on, right? And the chances that any team is going to have the same people with the same strengths is almost impossible. So
mhm.
leaders, embrace the struggle.
I feel like that's a really good point. I feel like it's often easy to embrace the struggle in a way that's unproductive. But like you
Right.
said, kind of as leaders, we should embrace that struggle as an opportunity to facilitate those good interactions and communication. Man, that's great
Absolutely.
stuff. That's absolutely great stuff. So as we move forward here, then what would the third action be that's needed to build our winning team?
Yeah. So the third action today and final is this. Leaders, it's all about empowering and developing your team. And so our final point kind of focuses on what does it take to get the fullest potential? You see, a winning team not only achieves its current goals, but it also grows and evolves over time. So this requires you as the leader to empower your team. You need to trust them to make decisions and take ownership of their work.
That sounds pretty simple, right? When you say it in those words. But how
Yeah.
does a leader really know if they can trust their team?
Yeah, well, leaders have to develop their people into a team that they can trust. I mean, leaders, do you trust your team? Leaders, you can do it by delegating responsibilities, and that provides autonomy for your team. That's a great place to start, right? And it doesn't mean just being hands off. It means that you need to offer guidance and support when needed. But like we discussed in team building, is providing opportunities for their people to develop the necessary skills and knowledge to be a team that they can trust. This isn't magic, it's intentionality. Leaders invest in development by encouraging continuous learning, providing opportunities for skill building, and ultimately career growth for each of the individuals.
Yeah, and really what a difference it can make for a leader, or I should say what a difference it can make to work for a leader that gives you the opportunities to try new things. At the very least, it can make work a lot more enjoyable to go to every day.
Yeah. And really, Scott, when team members feel valued and they feel supported, they're more likely to give their best, and everything comes back to the development of people. So, since we're all about simplifying complexity around here, right? Here's just like a quick practical example of delegating responsibilities and what providing autonomy looks like. So, take for instance a football season, right? So whether you're college or you're in the pros, if you are the coach of a team, if you're the head coach, you have to decide how you're going to dole out those responsibilities, right? Some coaches are very offensive minded, so they want to run all the offensive plays. Some coaches are defensive minded, and so they say, well, I'm gonna deal with all the defense. I'm gonna have somebody else do the offense. But you got to make that decision as a leader. You need to know what to give away and what to keep. And let me tell you, my favorite coaches, whether it's pros or college or even down to the Pop Warner level, are the coaches that can delegate responsibilities, that have people doing both their offense and their defense, and they're actually just able to view everything from a higher level, from maybe like a 10,000 foot view, and step in when they need to, right? Because that's part of the struggle, and helping your team do that's going to make them grow. And I really think those are some of the best teams out there.
Yeah, I probably have to agree. You're always talking about Nick Saban, and I feel like Nick Saban does that with Rolling Tide. Absolutely. I feel like he's got that 10,000 foot view of what's going on. So, yeah. So we've covered a lot of things today. We've covered assembling the right mix of talent, fostering collaboration and synergy, and then empowering and developing your team. So hopefully these insights are even better for our leaders. But before we go, Mo, you got any final thoughts for us?
Yeah, just this, leaders, it really is about taking the time to build that team. Wherever you're at in the process, make sure that you're giving yourself the grace to build that winning team. There's going to be a lot of setbacks. Don't worry about those setbacks. Just embrace that struggle, because you as the leader, you struggle at least as much, but probably more than the people on your team. So give yourself time to fail. Try new things. You're not going to get it all right, but if you give it your best shot, I guarantee you're going to have fun doing it, and you're going to start embracing the failures and liking them, because it's going to cause you to be a better person.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, that brings us to the end of this episode. If you enjoyed listening today, we encourage you to rate, review, and subscribe, and don't forget to share. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast. Highlights and resource links are available for you in the show notes. We hope that you will join us next time as we continue on the leadership journey. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss out, and share with others so they don't miss out. See you next time.